It's time for another edition of Football at 4. Adam Caplan, host of the Inside the Birds podcast, which you can get on all podcasting platforms. And don't forget their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds. Football at 4 is here. Adam Caplan is here. We're going to take a look back at the NFC East weekend. The Eagles, of course, win on Friday night. We'll get Adam's thoughts on that. And, of course, they're getting ready for the Falcons, the Commanders with a loss, the Giants with the loss, the Cowboys with the win. Let's go around the NFC East with Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast. Adam, what's up, buddy?
Yeah, Mike, good to talk to you. Yeah, obviously we haven't talked since that game Friday night, which is, I got to tell you, for a regular season game, I understand it's week one, so there's more excitement. I mean, it was an international game. It certainly had a lot of urgency. Knockdown, drag-out, offensive fest. Usually we don't see that, Mike. Usually I don't see a lot of offense in week one, but that was one of the games that had a lot of offense. So it was, I know Eagle fans were loving it, and they came out, right now, as we understand it, pretty healthy. They didn't list anyone on the injury report coming out of the game, and we'll see if there are any pop-up injuries when they practice first this week on Thursday. But it was really a fun game to watch and to analyze and kind of take a look at. And then you also mentioned the NFC East, which had its issues this week.
It sure did, and we'll get into that in just a second. I do want to ask you one thing on each side of the ball. One, were you surprised at the Saquon Barkley usage, how big of a part of the offense he was?
Yeah, I would say from a touch total, a little bit higher than I expected. To be honest with you, I didn't expect that much. But in the end, it was good to see him use in the pass game. I know he didn't catch a lot of passes. I think he caught both targets.
Yep. The
big play, obviously, was the wheel route. It's just funny because, Mike, last summer, not this summer, the summer when DeAndre Swift was an Eagle, every day it seemed like he caught a ton of passes. We did see wheel routes. And we saw next to nothing in the regular season. So there's really no way to know if it's going to continue. And again, he only had 2 targets to catch both of them. But I like the route that he was asked to run. He got open. He made a great catch. That was not an easy catch, by the way. So that was good. I mean, I love the personnel usage. I want to add that, Mike, before we move on. Really 11 and 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, 2 receivers, and 3 receivers, and 1 tight end. Just the usage of it, the pre-snap motion, the most they've had in any game in many years. It was good to see that. So overall, I love the game plan. I know it's week one. You can't count on anything other than they're going to have a lot of motion. That was never in question the day that Kellen Moore came in here. But we did learn a lot, Mike. You mentioned offensively. Defensively, they had a lot of breakdowns in the game. Against the run, they were awful at times. Sometimes they were better. Zach Bond was an unbelievable story.
Yeah.
We talked to Greg Cosell tonight for our Patreon members. That's going to come up. That we have a half an hour if you're on Patreon with us, patreon.com/InsideTheBirds. If nobody asks it, I will be asking it. That'll be my first question to Greg. Is that real? What did you see? Were there any bad plays? Because Greg was kind of shocked when they decided they were going to play him at inside linebacker, which he's never played before. And it's been quite the story, Mike. That was the defensive story of the game. There's no question about it.
Yeah, he would be the guy I was going to ask you about, but since you brought him up, the one other guy is Mitchell, and how impressed maybe you left with Quinyon Mitchell and what they might do with him moving forward now.
Yeah, we expected him to play mostly outside. He did. He didn't play inside a nickel. That was Avante Maddox, which, by the way, they've been practicing this a couple weeks. Because Isaiah Rodgers got hurt in practice a couple weeks ago. Now, when Rodgers comes back, if he gets cleared, he's got to get cleared medically to take contact on his injured hand. He also, and we're going to talk to Cosell about Cooper DeJean's role. What did he see from it? DeJean could be the nickel. I know it's a lot to ask of him. We did see him in nickel at this point in terms of he came in sub situations. We'll ask Greg, what was he in dime? Was it just nickel? What did he see? But bottom line is, and obviously Gardner Johnson could do it. They'll be okay. Just Max has got to play better. You don't want to ding him. He gives up a couple plays, and everybody thinks he can't play anymore. It's the way fans are. They overreact to everything. It's like that offensive side of the football. Maddox has been a pretty good nickel corner over the years. He gave up a couple plays, which you can't give up. We get that. But overall, Mike, their depth at corner has really shown up. And Ringo clearly is going to be he's going to be the fourth outside corner when Rodgers comes back, which is the best role for him. But he had a good summer. So we also learned that game, Mike. Their depth at corner is pretty good.
Yep, it was a good night. We'll talk more about their defense as they get ready for the Falcons. Let's go around the NFC East and kind of get a take here on each team. Commanders, looked flat against Tampa. Tampa, I thought, had one of the more impressive wins. Commanders had a little buzz entering the week. They'll play the Giants this week, so we'll get into them too. But what'd you think about Washington in Week 1?
Yeah, and I try to temper that because I know every interview I seem to do around the country, okay, are the Commanders going to be that surprise team like the Jaguars 2 years ago and Texans like last year? I said no, because the roster isn't good enough. I think people, including myself, I missed on the Texans last year. I didn't think the roster was as good as it turned out to be. The Washington is not. Now, Jaden Daniels ran the ball effectively. I mean, he was really good running the football. But, Mike, they couldn't get anything done in their passing game at Tampa. I know it's not easy to play there on the road, and you wear warm in Week 1. But, by the way, Olamide Zaccheaus is a starting outside receiver for them. He's really an inside receiver. Like, I'm sure he'll play mostly inside going forward, but they're just not good enough on offense. And defensively, here's another problem for Washington, Mike. Lack of pass rushers. Dan Quinn brought in this guy, Dorrance Armstrong, who was with them in Dallas. But, man, overall, they have very little pass rush. You mentioned Baker Mayfield was maybe the best quarterback in Week 1. He was phenomenal. Their offensive line was terrific. They're good. They're a nice team. And by the way, the Eagles, they face them in Week 4 right before their bye.
Giants, obviously, not a lot of expectations. Probably were even worse than we could have anticipated with at least offensively. In Week 1 against a Vikings team that doesn't have a lot of expectation.
I won't lie. I was expecting better. I thought it'd be way more competitive. Yeah, look, the Giants have issues. They have 3 new starters on their offensive line. Daniel Jones looked like a guy who hadn't played in nearly a year. It's the first time he's played since last November, come back from the ACL injury. Now, the Giants, talking to them, they think he's totally healthy. That's not the problem. Just rusty. Timing was bad. He put up some garbage time stuff with Wan'Dale Robinson, but they struggled. Yeah, look, their defense is not good enough to carry them. They have more talent on defense than they have in years past, particularly in the front 7. They're very weak in their secondary. We're going to go inside the NFC East every Tuesday, Mike, going forward. And the Giants, and I know there are Giant fans listening who are from your area there of listenership. It's going to be a long year. I mean, I had them somewhere around 6 wins. Maybe that was too strong in that one, Mike, because I thought their defense would be better. Now Minnesota doesn't have a very good passing game with Sam Darnold, but the Giants, Mike, are a real concern going forward. I mean, this division, once again, does not look to be very good.
No, the bottom 2 teams obviously struggled, but then there were the Cowboys. Let's get your thoughts. I thought of all the teams on Sunday, they had maybe one of the more complete, impressive wins. They beat a Cleveland team that went to the playoffs last year and has a good defense.
Mike, we got to understand, though, and I'm not trying to protect the Browns here, and give the Cowboys so much credit, but it's really hard when your 2 starting offensive tackles are not able to play due to injury. You're just not going to overcome that. And Dallas knew this. Mike Zimmer knew this. And they took advantage. Deshaun Watson was awful, but he was under siege the entire game. And Cleveland's defense had some problems, no question about it. Well, the big thing was they did what they could, but the problem is their offense couldn't get anything going. And when you ask Deshaun Watson to throw the ball 45 times and he's under pressure the whole time. Remember, Nick Chubb is out. They don't know when exactly he'll be back. They're starting running back. Dallas did what it had to do. Wasn't the most impressive offensive showing, but it was really the defense that took over. I'm not there on Dallas. That was a great win, no question about it. But again, you have to consider the circumstances. You always have to have context. Cleveland's dealing with a lot of problems. You really have to wonder, they're locked in 2 more years of fully guaranteed money at $45 million a year for Deshaun Watson. He hasn't played good football, Mike, since 2020. It's been a long time.
Yeah, no, he was a big story of what happens with that. I mean, he got, 230, was it, $1 million guaranteed, and it's just been an absolute bust for them. How do you move on from that if you're Cleveland? We'll see what they decide to do. But you're right. I mean, he was under siege all day. I mean, he just couldn't, get his, there was pressure all day there. But the Cowboys, what'd you think of their offense, though, against a good Cleveland defense?
Yeah, I mean, they did what they could. It wasn't real explosive. They didn't run the ball particularly well. See, here's the thing: when you get up so big so early, there's no urgency to start throwing the ball around the field. It's kind of like when a pitcher, like a starting pitcher in baseball, you're up 10-1 and you try different things. You can get away with it, and you just don't have the urgency to shut teams down. It was hard. It was hard because Cleveland was so inept offensively, and Dallas could do whatever it wanted. It was really not competitive. I mean, I expect much better from Cleveland. You can't blame Jim Schwartz here. What could they possibly do? Their offense kept 4 and out, and that's just now. David Njoku's hurt. Their tight end. They might be a disaster. And by the way, Kevin Stefanski, the head coach, and Andrew Barry, the GM, they both had their contracts extended in the spring.
I like, by the way, moving forward with Dallas, we'll see. They play New Orleans this week. I like the fact that you got New Orleans, who had a big game against Carolina. We'll see if they can bounce and go up in competition there. Before we get out of here with the NFC East, obviously San Francisco played last night. Do they look like the clear class of the NFC?
Oh, no question. It's what I thought going in. Without Christian McCaffrey, it was an odd game. The Jets got up early, Mike, if you recall. I was like, wow, the Jets went down and scored. They
right
took
down
the lead.
The field.
Right, 7-3. I mean, they went up after being down 3-0, and I was like, well, okay, see what happens. The thing that shocked me is their run defense was pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. It's not like Hassan Reddick would have helped them against the run. It was bad, man. I know that one of their linebackers got hurt, but they were bad the entire game. Jordan Mason's a former undrafted free agent. 2 years ago, and he won for 147 and a touchdown. He looked great. I give Kyle Shanahan credit. He manufactured a lot with Deebo Samuel and Mason. Very disappointing the Jets, Mike. I picked them to win the division. I know it's week 1, Mike. The Jets will be better going forward, and they play at Titans. I think they play at Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken, this week. Let me look at the schedule here. Looks like the Jets. Yes, they play at the Titans. Mike, the Titans totally choked against the Bears. I don't know if you saw that. They had the game. Their defense played really well. And then Will Levis had an awful game. Just he gave the game away, and the Bears got a ton of turnovers, and they took the game away from the Titans. But that's a tough loss if I'm the Titans.
All right. Real quick, before we let Adam Caplan run here, questions leading into the Eagles and their next opponent, the Falcons. Falcons did not play well at all last week. I thought they were one of the more disappointing teams, too, with that offense. Their defense looked pretty good, but offensively they looked like they had been in cement all day with a lot of the weapons they had there, just did not have a good day. You look at that Falcons offense, what would worry you just off the top of the bat here as the Eagles get ready for them?
Well, a couple things. Their offensive line, and all 5 starters are back for Atlanta. They did not play well. T.J. Watt lost 2 sacks due to penalties. He also had a sack in the game. They really only should have given up 3 points. They had a turnover overturned, and they just completely shut down Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, see, here's the problem with him, Mike. He cannot move. You talk about cement shoes. I mean, he just can't move.
Yeah.
I mean, he's stuck in mud. And if you don't protect him, and they don't really have a great third receiver. In fact, Ray McLeod has mostly been a special teams returner his entire career. We'll talk more about this Friday when we break down the game for Monday night. McLeod led them in receiving. That's not what they're looking for. They've got a lot of talent with Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, who did score, Drake London, Darnell Mooney. They've got plenty of talent. Defensively, they have their own. And Justin Fields is not very good, so I'm not going to give them a thumbs up. But they didn't stop the run. They really struggled against the run, and the Eagles got their run game going later in the game. So Atlanta, yeah, I agree with you. I did pick the Bucs though to win the NFC South. I'm going to stick with that. I know it's week 1. Atlanta, look, they're running a brand new offense in West Coast, completely different from the guy who was calling the plays for the Steelers on the other side of the football in that game.
All right, we'll get into that game a little bit more, Eagles and Falcons on Friday with Adam Caplan. Don't forget the Inside the Birds podcast, breaking down more Eagles this week, and we have plenty more this week on Football at 4. Jeff Mosher tomorrow from the Inside the Birds podcast. He is Adam Caplan. Thank you, pal.
Thank you.
All right, there he goes, Adam Caplan at Caplan NFL for another edition of Football at 4.